voice from above, my neighbor, loves guessing what I'm doing. At first it was funny, but now I'm actually scared. There's some kind of unspoken law of the universe that controls relationships with neighbors. I think you know what I mean. That specific distance. The kind you only have with someone living across the hall. Yeah, I know what you look like. But that's it. I have no idea what your name is. And even though I know where you live, I know nothing about your life. If you died, I'd feel uncomfortable. But I wouldn't really grieve. You get it. Everyone has a neighbor like that. For me, it was Mrs. Veroli. I didn't care about her, and she didn't care about me. We barely crossed paths. I'm 30, divorced. She's over 60. She walks her dog before I leave for work and after sunset. I never see her otherwise. Honestly, she looks creepy. Sunken eyes, hands always shaking, skin like parchment, a hooked nose, thin gray hair, almost bald. If you look closely, she wasn't friendly. A couple of times I tried to say hello. She didn't even nod. I only learned her name from the mailbox in the lobby. She lives right above me, and for an old woman, she was suspiciously noisy. I thought maybe her grandkids visited, because at night there was constant stomping above, and she blasted the TV at the strangest hours. I don't know what she watched, but sometimes kids' channels were screaming at full volume. My ceiling was literally vibrating. Turning that on at 3 a.m.? Not cool, Grandma. One night, I snapped. "Hey, ma'am!" I jumped onto the table and started banging on the ceiling. "Shut it off already!" What the hell? The stupid music kept blasting for about 15 seconds, then suddenly stopped. I stood there on the table, listening. "Please stop blasting that crap at 4 a.m., I shouted. "Sorry," her voice came from above. "You knocked on the ceiling." "Yeah." "Bet you had to climb onto the table to reach it." That actually amused me. Yeah. Anger works wonders, ma'am. If you're such a good guesser, what am I doing now? You jumped down and probably stumbled a little. Nope. I'm still on the table, I lied. In reality, I had already climbed down and didn't stumble. She didn't reply, and the loud TV never came back on. Over the next week, a strange game started between us. Every time I made a noise, she would immediately start guessing what I was doing. It was funny. I argued with an old woman who had a very dry, specific sense of humor. Right now, you're eating shredded cheese standing over the sink. Then you'll watch a cheap horror movie and fall asleep without brushing your teeth, came her voice from above. Yeah, Grandma. Spot on. I'm surprised you still hear this well after the war. Bet we both have back problems. At least I have an excuse because of my age. Sometimes I passed her in the hallway and whispered, "Hey, Grandma." She would look around as if she was embarrassed to be seen with me. It was hilarious. A couple of weeks passed. Around 2 a.m., Mrs. Veroli's voice came from above. "Can't sleep, kid." "Don't call me that, Grandma. I'm not that old." "Yeah, sure. Don't piss me off, Jay, or I'll come down and kick your ass. Try me." Silence. Time passed. I thought she went to sleep. Then suddenly, a knock on my door at 2 a.m. Nothing good ever comes from that. I felt uneasy. What if she didn't understand the jokes? The knock came again. Slowly. Carefully. I walked to the door. I knew it was locked, but something felt wrong. The knocking was playful, mocking. What the hell, I thought. Pretending you're not home? A hoarse whisper came from behind the door. It sent chills down my spine. "Listen, Miss Veroli, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I'm not into that. Jay, did you really think you were my type? Oh no. I just wanted to play hide and seek." "No thanks." Her voice became stretched, unnatural. My whole body went stiff. I carefully looked through the peephole and saw nothing. The hallway was empty, and yet her voice came from right behind the door. "Hello. Open the door. Let me guess. You're holding your breath." I stepped back. My throat went dry. I wanted to shout something, but the words got stuck in my chest. Then she started singing, a quiet, dragging whisper filling the silence like a bad dream fills your head. A quiet step on bathroom tiles, your reflection frozen in the mirror. The light went out. But in the strange void, someone waits, and you are gone. I almost lost it, backed away while she continued. Checked the lock twice, once for fear, once for courage. "Shut the hell up or I'll call the police," I shouted. She stopped. I crawled back to the peephole, staring for what felt like forever. No movement. She either left instantly or sat there for hours, curled up. I don't know which is worse. I didn't sleep all night. When dawn started creeping in, I looked outside and saw her walking her dog calmly, as if nothing happened. In daylight, she looked like a normal old woman. Who would have thought that at night she loses her mind? That evening, I ran into another neighbor, Sandra. I grabbed her by the shoulders. She froze, terrified. Only then did I realize how it looked. "Sandra, sorry, I didn't sleep all night. Do you know Mrs. Veroli?" "Yes, she lives above you, right? Has she ever talked to you?" "She scared me half to death. She came to my door at 2 a.m. and started singing." Sandra frowned. "Mrs. Veroli?" "Yeah, well, I talk through the ceiling sometimes. It started when I told her to lower the TV. I thought we kind of bonded, but she's actually crazy." Sandra shook her head slowly. "You mean the apartment above you? That's Mrs. Veroli, thin, walks a dog in the morning?" "Yes. But she's been deaf and mute since birth. Didn't you notice she never answers greetings? Her daughter told me years ago. You couldn't have talked to her." I thought I lived alone for 3 months. My roommate paid rent but never showed up. It felt like the perfect situation. Finding someone in this city is always a risk. Desperate ads, 10-minute meetings, trying to decide if you can trust someone with your home. After my last roommate tried to build a podcast studio at 3 a.m. in the living room, I wanted something simple, someone who pays and stays out of my life. Leo seemed perfect. A geological consultant, always traveling, rarely home. The money he offered was high, but he said convenience matters more. We met once at a cafe. Normal guy, polite, firm handshake. He paid 3 months in advance plus deposit. Next morning, he flew to South America and said he'd return in a few months. He moved his things while I wasn't home. We never met again. It felt perfect. A roommate that only existed on paper. For 2 months, everything was quiet, peaceful, like living alone but cheaper. Then small things started. A photo frame had moved. I didn't remember putting it there. I told myself I was tired. Then my coffee mug disappeared. I found it in the bathroom sink. I couldn't remember bringing it there. I told myself I was distracted. But the atmosphere changed. The silence became tense. The apartment creaked like always, but now every sound felt intentional. Food started disappearing. An apple, a slice of cheese. Nothing obvious, just enough to doubt yourself. Then a soda tab appeared on the counter and I didn't open it. That's when real fear hit. Leo's room at the end of the hall was still closed. He was gone for 3 months. We barely texted. His replies were short and cold. Project extended. Hope you're okay. One evening, I smelled something earthy, metallic, rotten, coming from his room. I leaned closer and tried to understand it, but couldn't. That night, I woke up to soft shuffling sounds in the hallway. I sat up, listening in the dark. watching the strip of light under my door, waiting for a shadow. There was no shadow. Eventually, I convinced myself it was just an old house settling. But in the morning, I found a trace on the kitchen tiles, about a meter from Leo's door. A dirty footprint with clumps of dark soil. My blood ran cold. The smell, the food, the mug, the footprint. Someone was inside my apartment. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? Someone moved my mug and left footprints. I already knew what they'd say. The whole next week I flinched at every sound. At night I blocked my bedroom door with a chair. I didn't know what was worse. The idea that I wasn't alone, or that I was losing my mind. Last Tuesday when I got home, I noticed Leo's door was slightly open. It hadn't opened for months. I froze in the hallway, paralyzed. Leo. Silence. Leo, are you back? Nothing. My hands were shaking as I walked down the hallway. I pushed the door and found the light switch. The room was completely empty. No bed, no dresser, no boxes, nothing. As if no one had ever lived there. The only thing was a Polaroid photo taped to the wall at eye level. I walked closer and peeled it off. It was a picture of me sleeping in my bed, taken from the foot of the bed. My face was pale from the flash, and in the background you could clearly see the chair blocking the door from the inside. The date was last night. My stomach twisted. I stepped back and my foot hit something, a duffel bag. Inside were crumpled, dirty clothes and photos. Dozens of photos. Me cooking, sitting on the couch, watching TV, standing at the sink. And in a side pocket there was a small bag. Inside it were clumps of my hair and nail clippings. I ran out without taking anything and called the police from a gas station a few kilometers away. When they searched, they found nothing. Leo's room was spotless. No bag, no photos, no smell. The landlord said Leo paid on time but knew nothing else. His phone was off. His address was a P.O. box. 2 days ago, I moved to another city. I won't say where. My door has 3 locks, but every night I wake up with the feeling that someone is standing in the doorway, watching. I thought I found the perfect roommate, the one who's never home. The truth is, he was always there. I just finished watching an old tape from my father's camera. God, I should have never come back to my childhood home, and especially not brought my wife and son. While I'm writing this, my wife Asha and my son Finley are packing in a hurry. They think I've gone insane. Let them think that, because I swear they will never see what's on that tape. Though honestly, I'm not sure that would save them because now it's not just on tape. It's here, in reality. My father killed himself on my 7th birthday. That time is a blank in my memory. Doctors said it's normal, a defense mechanism to hide trauma. They said the memories were still there, just locked away. Seems like this tape broke that lock. My mother died last year and left me the house. Finley wanted to stay here to feel connected to her. I agreed. I didn't know what was hidden here. Or maybe I just forgot. We had lived here for 2 weeks when I found the camera in the attic. I plugged it in and somehow it still worked after 30 years. The recording started in 1995, on my 6th birthday. 11 kids around the table. Cake, happy birthday Jordan, mom filming, dad cutting the cake. At first, I thought the camera was broken because behind him, mimicking his movements, was another dad. Like a reflection, but wrong, slightly behind. I expected more distortion, but there were only 2 of him. I thought it was a glitch, but then I saw the face. It wasn't a copy. The body moved in sync, but the face was wrong. Crushed, like paper. Too heavy, impossible. The features were buried under skin. Only the lips were visible, trembling with rage. It was distorted, grotesque, too clear to be tape noise. My body went numb. Fear pinned me to the floor. I couldn't move. I could only watch. Then the scene changed. December. I'm under the Christmas tree, opening gifts with my younger brother. My heart jumped when I saw movement in the branches. 6-year-old me didn't notice anything. I was too busy with my toys. But from the thick branches, a red sleeve with a reindeer pattern reached out toward me. An exact copy of my own sleeve. The creature was trying to attach itself to me, the same way the copy of my father had attached itself to him. What the? I heard my mother's voice off camera. She noticed something too. The recording cut again and jumped forward. A park. My parents and I are sitting at a picnic table. The camera is standing on something stable. I remember that day. Why do I remember that one day if the rest of my childhood is erased? My father looked strange. This time, he was alone. No copy behind him. But he was pale. Deathly pale. He looked sick. Little Jordan was eating a sandwich, not noticing anything. But Mom was tense. She knew something was wrong with Dad. She tried to pretend everything was fine, smiled into the camera. Today is Jordan's 7th birthday. She hesitated. Daddy, say something funny for the camera. 7th birthday. Oh, God. My father looked straight into the lens. It felt like he was looking at me, the me of today. Through 30 years of silence, he said nothing. My mother's smile shook. She leaned back and looked behind his shoulder, as if searching for that face, the one hiding in the shadows. Are you okay? She asked quietly. You said it would get easier if we left the house. You said you'd become yourself again. My father reacted so fast that I almost dropped the camera from fear. He grabbed my mother by the throat. I screamed at her in the present. And there, on the tape, from behind a nearby tree, a hand appeared, wearing the exact same short sleeve as little Jordan, the same creature from the Christmas tree. The copy made my younger self wipe away his tears and sit still. And he obeyed. He became as cold and detached as my father, who was strangling my mother. But just before life finally left her body, my father stopped, as if something inside him snapped. I know why I remember this. He stood up. My mother pulled little me close with weak hands. My father reached into the picnic basket and took out a kitchen knife. He had brought it to cut the cake, but he didn't touch the cake. Didn't touch my mother. Didn't touch me. He put the knife to his own throat. I dropped the camera. At that exact moment, I felt weight on my shoulders, on my arms, on my back. It wasn't tiredness, not something you could shake off. Even when I stood up, I could feel something pulling me down, something that had been hiding behind my back from the moment I brought Asha and Finley into this cursed house. Something I forgot in the blurred days of my youth, before I left this place, before I got away. I understood it too late. My family is in danger. I turned toward the mirror on the wall and saw that same infinity. Right behind my shoulder stood a copy of me with that crushed, paper-like face. It was pressed right against me. I opened my mouth to scream, but the creature's hand instantly covered my lips. I felt burning pain. The second Jordan rubbed its clay-like skin against mine, trying to become one with me. I tore myself free, screamed and stumbled on the stairs at the exact moment Finley was coming up. My double vanished instantly, but I saw it in my son's eyes. Terror. He saw it, at least for a moment. He saw what was standing behind my shoulder. Dad, what was that? Pack your things. I cut him off. The skin around my mouth was still burning from that thing's touch. Now, move. And now here we are. I'm standing in the doorway, rushing my family. I can barely breathe. We need to get out. My wife keeps asking where the burns on my face came from, but I can't explain. And my son looks at me like I'm a ghost. I just need to get them out. I hope that thing lets go of me once we drive far enough away, the way it happened when I was a boy. My head will clear, and this will end. I won't end like my father. I won't let it win. When I was little, my neighbor used to spy on me through the fence, and that fence was at least 3 meters high. I didn't even realize my new client was that same neighbor until I turned into her driveway. The street name had seemed vaguely familiar when I first read it. As I drove, some landmarks gave me a strange feeling of recognition. Nothing specific, just a prickling at the edge of my mind, something I couldn't explain. The puzzle finally came together when I saw my old house standing right next door to my client's property. I know it's strange that it took me so long. Strange that I recognized nothing, even when I typed the address into the navigator. But my uncle took me away from that quiet neighborhood when I was only 6. I remembered almost nothing about living on that street or in that house. My girlfriend Ellie said that wasn't exactly normal. She gently hinted that maybe my brain was blocking the memories on purpose. After parking, I sat there for a long time, gripping the steering wheel and staring at my childhood home. It bordered a dense forest. Tall trees hung over the roof. The house itself looked abandoned. Broken windows, empty bottles scattered across the dead grass. Obviously, no one had lived there for a long time. A heavy feeling pressed into my chest. For a moment, I wanted to drive away. But I had started my lawn mowing business only a couple months ago. I needed the money. This woman was only my 3rd client. She didn't call like the others. She emailed me. Interested in your service. Work every Sunday weekly? I replied that Sunday worked for me and asked for the address. She sent it, then another message. The door is open on Sunday. Money is on the table. Help yourself to a drink and food. It seemed strange that she hired someone who lived an hour away instead of somebody local, but she promised a generous tip. Sitting in the van, I tried to remember my old neighbor. Elderly, probably, judging by the way she wrote. That seemed right. But when I tried to pull her face out of memory, there was only emptiness. Another fragment lost because of my strange childhood amnesia. Her lawn was wildly overgrown, grass up to the knees, thick and uneven. And yet the house itself looked completely normal. A neat 2-story house with a porch. It was so well kept that the state of the yard felt strange, as if not mowing it was intentional. I hesitated, not knowing whether to knock or just start working. In the end, I began the job. Some part of me didn't want to meet her. I was delaying that moment, and I can't explain why. While I was mowing, my eyes kept returning to the fence separating her yard from my old house. It was massive, at least 3 meters high. I couldn't believe something like that was allowed in a quiet suburban street. But it wasn't just the size. Every time I looked at it, pressure built behind my eyes, like a memory trying to break through. And something inside me was fighting it. My head started to pulse. And suddenly, for a split second, I remembered hair. Long black strands hanging over the fence from the other side, tangled, thin, clinging to the wood like a torn curtain. And I froze. I was on my cheap plastic tricycle. It was missing one back wheel, so I had to balance not to fall. Strange how useless details return to memory when everything else is gone. The hair moved, and slowly over the edge of the fence, a pale forehead rose up. There were eyes. White, cloudy. I saw them for just a moment, but I knew exactly who they were looking at. Me. Only me. Then behind me there was a sound, maybe a voice, maybe someone called my name. The eyes vanished, the forehead disappeared. The hair slid upward, strand by strand, like snakes, back behind the fence until it was gone. Cold shot through my body. I gripped the lawnmower tighter, focused on the grass in front of me, and didn't look at the fence again. It had to be my imagination, something I made up out of boredom. No one can look over a 3-meter fence unless they're on stilts or some ridiculous ladder. And even then, why would anyone do that, just to watch a kid playing in the yard? It was too strange, too absurd. And yet the anxiety settled deep in my stomach and refused to leave. Because that image, the hair, the eyes watching, became one of the clearest memories of that house, of that time, clearer than anything from the past 10 years. I shook my head, pushed it away, and went back to work. An hour later, the lawn looked decent again. I loaded the equipment into my uncle's van, and then I remembered the money. I knocked on the front door and waited. She said I could come in, but it felt wrong just walking into someone's house. After a few minutes, I grabbed the handle and went inside. "Miss Ramona, are you home?" I called out. The first thing I noticed was the ceiling, unusually high. The space felt wide, open like a cave, and it was freezing inside. Goosebumps ran down my arms. Most of the first floor was open. I immediately saw the kitchen, a wooden table, and on it, neatly placed money. Next to it, a glass pitcher with something like lemonade, ice floating inside, a clean glass, and a sandwich on a plate. "Help yourself," she had written, and still I hesitated. Felt stupid for being cautious, but I'd never even seen her. I took the money and almost choked counting it. 4 bills, $50 each. 200 total. I had asked for 60. She mentioned tips, but this was too much. What if she was old? What if she made a mistake? I took 100 and left the rest on the table, just in case. And then I heard something upstairs. A rasping sound. Wet, uneven, like air struggling through damaged lungs. Then 2 sharp creaks, one after another, floorboards complaining under sudden weight. My whole body tensed. Someone was definitely home. I stared at the stairs. "Hey!" My voice was too loud in the empty space. "Miss Ramona?" No answer. I took a step toward the stairs against my better judgment. My heart started pounding. What made that sound? Did she fall? Is she hurt? If she's elderly, I have to check. That's what any normal person would do. But another part of me was screaming, "Run!" It was sudden and absolute, like I had stepped somewhere I shouldn't, like I was in a trap. A second later, I turned back to the table, grabbed the sandwich so I wouldn't seem rude, my hands shaking and clumsy, and got out fast. When I got home, I sat in the van for a long time, engine off, the sandwich on the passenger seat. Finally, I lifted the top slice of bread. Inside, butter and raw red meat. I swallowed and then saw something else woven into the meat. I grabbed it and pulled. A single hair, dark, absurdly long. I told my girlfriend what happened, but I didn't mention the memory. Ellie laughed. "You got scared of a little old lady?" "I don't know. If she's old," I said. "I've never seen her. What if it's not even a woman? How would I know?" "You're sure?" she said. "You said she was your old neighbor." Her expression softened but stayed insistent. She always looked like that when she tried to dig into my childhood. "You're sure you don't remember anything?" That long black hair came back again, and then I remembered something else. A strand caught on the fence, blowing in the wind until it snapped free and floated down to 6-year-old me. I caught it midair, played with it carefully so it wouldn't break, wrapped it around my arm, amazed that it could wrap almost my entire forearm like bandages on an Egyptian mummy. I shook my head, answering Ellie, and instead told her about the sandwich. Ellie laughed again, shaking her head. Poor woman. Probably has dementia. A week later, I came back. I didn't want to, but Ellie convinced me that I was being ridiculous and I needed the money if we ever wanted to move out of my uncle's place. The whole drive there, my stomach was twisting. Even before I started the lawnmower, my eyes found the fence again. I remembered long, twisted fingers reaching over the top, and I remembered again how I had seen half a face looking down at me from above. Only the eyes and the forehead, watching over the edge of the fence. I reluctantly went into the house to get the payment. This time she had left $300 on the table. Beside it lay a note, written in thin, spider-like handwriting. Take all money. Why no drink? My eyes shifted to the pitcher of lemonade. I filled a glass, planning to pour half of it into the sink, just to make it look like I had drunk some. But instead, for some reason I still can't explain, I took a small sip. It was cold, sweet, delicious. After that, the memories came back stronger than ever. That night, I had a dream about food being thrown over the enormous fence. Sometimes it was fried chicken, still warm inside a plastic bag, juices splashing against the sides. Sometimes it was a whole raw chicken, with feathers stuck to its pale skin. Sometimes fresh fruit in a cracked container, and sometimes rotten apples in a thick piece of heavy red meat. I remembered the hunger. I remembered building a shelter out of a blanket in the bushes by the fence, a little secret nest where I could hide and keep what I was given. I remembered eating like a little animal, devouring everything edible before anyone could find me. I remembered how my head and neck were always itching. They multiplied, bit me, crawled, and nobody cared. An entire kingdom of parasites lived in my hair. Then I remembered the hand. It slipped through the narrow gap between the fence and the bushes, where I sat with my back pressed against the boards. It rustled through the thin branches. The hand was enormous but gentle. One long finger moved the tangled hair away from my face. Shh. Quiet. I looked up and saw only an endlessly long, thin gray arm stretching upward beyond the fence. I remembered how I wrapped my tiny hands around that huge finger and clung to it tightly, crying. Then I remembered an angry voice coming from somewhere. The finger moved softly until I let go, and the hand disappeared. The limb withdrew back, and when I looked up again, all I could see along the length of the fence was a faint swirl of dark hair. Someone ripped the blanket off my shelter. They were shouting, screaming in disgust. I was sitting on a pile of food. Much of it had rotted. There were flies. There were maggots. Someone's hands grabbed me and dragged me out of the bushes, away from the massive fence, so hard I thought the bone in my arm would crack. Stop, I screamed. The third time I came to mow Ramona's lawn, I didn't hesitate. Something inside me had begun to clear, like an image slowly coming into focus. And I knew I needed to talk to her. To Ramona, finally. I didn't know whether these memories were completely real, but the pieces were now coming together, fallen into place with quiet inevitability. I felt closer to the truth than ever before, and instead of a headache, it gave rise to resolve inside me, something that refused to stay silent any longer. I thought maybe my neighbor had been a kind old woman who sometimes sat with me. Maybe she fed me. Maybe she cared for me. Maybe she read me stories. Maybe this was the only way my memories could return, disguised as something else, not entirely real, but filled with truth. As I started the lawnmower that time, I never took my eyes off the fence. I remembered humming, a low, steady, droning sound, while I lay hidden in the bushes by the fence. The screams from the house always grew quiet when I listened to her humming. I remembered being lifted so high that I could see the roof of my house. I remembered being placed on a strong tree branch in the forest and being given a dead fox. I remembered sinking my teeth into the flesh through laughter, feeling warm blood running down my cheeks. I remembered sitting in a cocoon of warmth high above the ground, watching the stars come out. I remembered running to my hiding place between the fence and the bushes, trembling, starving, sick with fear. I remembered someone chasing me. "Henry, get back here right now, you little brat," she screamed. She grabbed me by the arm and spun me around hard. "Mommy, stop," I cried. "Don't do it anymore. It hurts." I remembered my mother freezing, and I remembered something touching the back of my head. Light, familiar, like the touch of long strands of hair. My mother gasped, staring at something above us. Terror twisted her face. I looked up, and then the fingers appeared. They wrapped around my mother's body and lifted her. Up, up, up. She screamed as she rose, so I shouted, "It's okay, Mommy. She's just gonna show you the stars." Then there was a deafening crack, and her scream stopped. I saw something fly across the sky like a meteor, disappearing into the forest. Arms closed around me. They were so warm when they lifted me, gentle, careful, wrapping me up while I trembled and pressed myself into the warmth. I rose high enough to see the roof of my house, just like all those other times. And then I finally remembered her face. The image was clear now, no longer blurred, impossible to look away from. She was pale, gaunt. Her lips were stretched too wide across her skull, but her eyes, they were dark, and yet they were warm. "Did Mommy like looking at the stars?" I asked her. She hummed a melody. My hands were shaking. I never turned off the lawnmower. I walked toward her house on numb legs. The sound of the engine faded into the distance, barely audible. The front door was open, as always. I slowly climbed the stairs. A low moan echoed from above, stretching and deepening as I got closer. The upper floor was completely open, wide, with a slanted ceiling like a giant attic. And there lay a very tall woman. Her skin was almost gray. Her features were rough, weathered, like someone impossibly old. Her limbs were long and thin, like a spider's. She lay on her side on a soft mat that covered almost the entire floor. Her body was curled carefully, deliberately, as if she were trying to make herself smaller for me. Her eyes found mine the moment I stepped in. I fell to my knees and burst into tears before I could stop myself. Horror, grief, and everything I had buried for so long flooded my mind, overwhelming, merciless. Fingers reached toward me, impossibly huge, wrapped around me and gently pulled me closer. I was drawn into warmth, deep and steady, and my shaking slowly began to ease. "You killed her?" I sobbed. "You killed her, didn't you?" She hummed softly. "Why? Why did you do that?" I said. The words broke apart as they came out of me. She moved the hair away from my face. My crying turned into quiet, broken sobs. "Why didn't she care about me?" I whispered. "Why did she starve me? Why did she hurt me? I was just a little child." Her warmth did not leave. Her breathing remained slow and even, and I fell asleep. When I woke up, I was in a bed. Across from me, in an armchair, sat a tiny old woman. Her gaze was absent, as if part of her were wandering somewhere far away and had not yet found its way back. And yet, she looked at me calmly, patiently. We were still upstairs. The huge mat still lay on the floor, just as before. The bed had been pushed into a small corner of the room, as if it had been placed there especially for me. "Who are you?" I asked. "What was that creature?" She did not answer. Instead, her eyes moved to something beside me. I followed her gaze and saw a folded note lying on the mattress. I picked it up with trembling hands. I am cursed with size and hunger, but I protect. Sweet little boy, cold and hungry, I carry you to the stars where she cannot reach. I lost myself when I took her, but she will not hurt you anymore. Please forgive me. When I got home, I finally asked my uncle to tell me the truth. I'd always known that something terrible had happened to my mother, but there were details that deep down I had never wanted to know. But now I felt stronger. I was ready. First, he showed me photographs. In them was me, a little boy. My hair was long and matted. I wore dirty clothes torn at the seams. My body was a map of bruises, cuts, and burns. In the end, there wasn't much more to know except for the fact that my mother was a monster. And when they found her in the woods one day, half-eaten, the case was quickly written off as a wild animal attack. But people who learned what she had done to me called it karma. I kept visiting Ramona. I brushed her hair and cared for her when she was a tiny, fragile old woman. I lay beside her and listened to her humming when she was something else. I wrote all of this down because, unlike my mother, Ramona deserves to be remembered. I could never tell anyone about her. They would have hurt her or killed her. But I needed someone to know. Maybe Ramona was a beast, but it wasn't her fault. Even when she lost control, it all came down to instinct, to protect. When she died, I fell asleep holding her enormous hand. And when I woke up, there was nothing there anymore. She was gone. Even though she no longer lives there, even though the house stands empty, I still come back to mow her lawn. Sometimes, after I finish the work, I stay until night swallows the sky. And when I look at the constellations, it feels like I am slowly rising above the roof and the house. That's all.